All right, ladies and gentlemen, another week, no F1, but I've got some crazy news. You might be wondering, why am I wearing sunglasses? And no, it's not because I've been crying, because Ferrari is still a trash team, even in 2026. No, that's not the reason why. The main reason is it looks cool. Anyway, the more important news is that Max Verstappen is doing the 24 hours of the Nurburgring. And guess what? He qualified. I know a lot of people are wondering, is Max Verstappen also dominating endurance racing? Well, so far he has been, but the caveat is he's been racing against a lot of amateur drivers. But now when the pros have come in, they are showing Max Verstappen flames. So Max Verstappen qualified 6th in qualifying 2, which happened, I guess, today. I don't know when you guys are watching this. So it happened on Friday, yes. And he qualified 6th, which is actually not bad. You know, I was so ready to bash and to be like, to just jump on Max Verstappen. But right now, I actually think this is a very good performance. This is his first race, I can say, that will be with full professionals. It's going to be like basically the best of the best in GT3 racing against Max Verstappen, or rather Max Verstappen racing against the best of the best in GT3. And 6th is not horrible. It's not the best. I know he would have wanted to qualify higher, but it's pretty good. And you could see, if you guys saw the qualifying during the live streams are free, guys. You can watch them on YouTube. You don't have to go anywhere else to watch them. He was racing, or he was qualifying and driving out at night. He did say he wants to do that because he hadn't done that, and in the rain as well. So that was like the most difficult conditions you could be in, and he was doing well, which is expected because, I mean, he's a Formula 1 driver and he's the best driver on the grid right now. So, I mean, pretty good performance. I was so ready to bash Max Verstappen, but you know what? I give my flowers where they're due. You know, I might be a Ferrari fan, but I am not going to disregard talent when I see talent. And Max Verstappen is talent, and he's showing it across motorsport. You know, he's a pure-bred racer. I sound like a Max Verstappen fan right now. You know, I should slow down a little bit. So yeah, nothing too crazy. It's just P6. Like, yeah, whatever. I could do that. Anyway, speaking of Max Verstappen and his future, as we can see, obviously Max Verstappen is getting into more racing outside Formula 1. We know the state of Formula 1 right now isn't the best. It's going through a phase right now. Formula 1 is going through something. So at the moment, Max Verstappen might leave Red Bull. Assuming he does want to stay in the sport, he might leave Red Bull for another team, maybe for just a different challenge, maybe, you know, for something different. He might do that, assuming he doesn't leave Formula 1 completely. Right, so as we can see, or as we know, Max Verstappen is likely to leave, or at least move teams when it comes to Formula 1. So at the moment, we all know V8s are likely to come back. Basically, every team so far has been on board. Audi was one of the teams that we were not sure about, but Mattia Binotto confirmed that, you know, he would be excited as well for V8s to come back. And that was one of the teams people were not sure of. The other teams are pretty much set. Honda might be the other team that we are not 100% sure about. Especially since they are behind. Right now, the team is not in the best stage. So in a way, that might be a good thing, because the change might be good for them, of like, okay, let's build up. Let's use this current era of this V6, 50-50 split or whatever we're calling them. And we use this to build up. And then when V8s come back, we're like fully built up the team, and the staff and everything is like sorted out. So maybe it might not be so bad after all, you know. It might be a blessing in disguise for Honda, so that they have time to prepare for when the new regs come, and then they're fully set for that. But anyway, On to Max Verstappen and his future. Right now, we don't know what might happen. Obviously, he is the only one who knows, and I guess people around him or close to him. But my thoughts is, I think Max Verstappen should just stay in F1. You know, he should just stick it out, get through the tough times. Because I mean, every great driver has had tough times in their career, in their Formula One career. And none of them just quit because they didn't like the regulations, or they didn't quit because they weren't winning anymore. You know, like Schumacher had so many years where he didn't win, and then he started winning, and then again after the changes by the FIA in 2005, and then he stopped winning. Then he ended up leaving, then he came back, but he wasn't winning anymore. You know, it's like a natural process. It's natural. I think somebody needs to tell Max Verstappen that losing is natural. It happens. You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Seems like Verstappen isn't very good at losing. Especially very early on in his career, he wasn't very good at losing. We can all be honest about that. But now, obviously, as he's won a lot, like now he doesn't have anything to prove. Maybe that's his reason of thinking of leaving. But I don't think it makes sense just to leave for that. So it's very interesting. Same thing has happened with Lewis. Same thing happened with basically all the great drivers that we know. They at some point stopped winning or were not winning, and then they won again, and then maybe they stopped winning again, stuff like that. And then natural course happens. They lose some of their raw speed, and then they leave the sport. That's how it usually happens. And that's also a conversation right now with Lewis Hamilton, but we'll get onto that, about his future as well. But with Max Verstappen, what I personally think is there is 3 teams that he's likely to go to, which is Mercedes, McLaren, and I guess the wild card at the moment would be Aston Martin. So Aston Martin, let's start off with that one because that's easy to dispute or agree with. Aston Martin right now is pretty much pure garbage, trash, the bottom of the barrel. As a team, Aston Martin's personnel is amazing, facilities perfect, but they have a lot to do. They have a lot of work that they need to do to get to the level that they need to be at, and for the investment to actually be worth something. You know, obviously Lawrence Stroll has invested a lot for his kid to drive in an F1 car. So, you know, the investment right now hasn't got to where it needs to be. And on the other side, Fernando Alonso is starting to think of leaving the sport as well. That's another thing we're going to talk about. You know, so a lot of things are happening right now in F1. F1 is going through something. That's what we can say. The next 2 seasons, by the time we get to 2028, the F1 we'll have then compared to the F1 we have, let's say, maybe even 2 years ago in 2024, those 2 are going to be so different. And currently we're going through that phase of change in F1. By the time we get to 2028, we might not have a world champion left on the grid. Lando is a world champion. Okay, so we might have Lando, I guess. And whoever might win this season, assuming it's someone new, which likely will be. But we might have none of the big F1 champions that we've had in the sport. Like, that's how crazy it's looking right now. So at the moment, it's very interesting what might happen. And as I think about it, Aston Martin is a very interesting option for Max Verstappen. The future might be really good, but it might take some time. Is Max Verstappen up for that? We don't know. I don't think Max Verstappen is up for that personally. I think he just wants to get into a car that's good, regulations that good, and just drive fast and win everything. That's that's how he is looking at it from my perspective. I don't think he's looking at it of, oh, let me stay with this team, let me try and build. Maybe not this phase, maybe like later on, once he's won a little bit more, maybe he'll get into that phase of, oh, maybe let me go to a team and like give them knowledge and blah blah blah, all that good stuff. Maybe that's my thought. But I don't. Max Verstappen doesn't give off vibes of someone who's just gonna go to a team just for the sake of it, you know. Even if the paycheck was like ridiculous, which I know Aston Martin would give him whatever he wants. So Aston Martin is a little chance, but I think it's possible maybe later on, but not now. Second option is McLaren, so that will be a straight swap with Oscar Piastri. Obviously, McLaren isn't gonna get rid of Lando for Max. We all know they have a favorite child. Zach is always like, no, we treat them. Nope. We know. I can see it. I can see it, Zach. We can see it. That there is a favorite child there, and obviously that is Lando. As fast as Oscar is, as good as he is, I think he's basically the same level as Lando. Honestly speaking, it's just an experience gap. But like pure pace wise, I think they are basically about the same level of driver. So whichever you choose, whichever side you go, you're basically getting the best from either of the drivers. So with Oscar going to Red Bull, it's very interesting because the Red Bull of 2024, 2023 is very different from the current Red Bull. The team has changed a lot. I think Oscar would do really well. Would it fit him? I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I think it does fit him because Oscar feels like a driver who kind of fits in any team. He doesn't have a very his personality isn't like too clashing with anything. He could be like in a very calm team like McLaren is, could be in a very more chaotic, crazy, team like Red Bull was, or is coming from. He could be in a very sophisticated team, maybe like Mercedes or like Aston Martin. Those kind of teams where I could see him playing in an ad of like a James Bond, but at the same time I could see him playing in an ad of like Red Bull doing something crazy at the same, he kind of works in both ways. So I think Oscar would work well for that. Maybe it's just because he's Aussie, so like it's fine. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I don't know if he should move. I'm not sure about that because I'm a big Oscar fan. Very devastating, when all your drivers have had not a very good past season and current season, but it is what it is. We'll win at some point. Next year is our year. So yeah, and obviously the third option for Max would be Mercedes. So Mercedes is an interesting one because George might be in big trouble here. I don't think Toto would get rid of Kimi and not George if he wanted Max. Like Max feels like a straight swap for George rather than a straight swap for Kimi. Kimi feels like the up and coming. He feels like the future, even though he is now, he has been outperforming George, but he feels like the future of the sport and of Mercedes. So for Toto to swap him and get rid of him, it doesn't make sense. After investing so much time throughout his junior career, it doesn't make any sense. But Max feels like a safe option. He's like, oh, okay, Max is a world champion. Max is a proven talent. He's won the championship. He's proven in championship-worthy machinery. So it's not like a coin toss. It's not like if he was getting Leclerc or if he was getting Oscar or if he was getting even Lando, Like Lando has won a championship, but like he hasn't had that multiple, like he's won once, yes, but like he hasn't gone through it repeatedly like Max has or like Lewis had, who was there before. So it doesn't feel the same if Toto would get rid of Kimi. It doesn't make any sense. So that pretty much means George would be out. So George basically, for him, this season is basically a must-win. If Mercedes continues to be basically the benchmark or on the same level as the best teams, car-wise, performance-wise, throughout the season, George should win the championship. If he doesn't win the championship, his seat is in trouble. Even from Leclerc. Like, I think Toto might choose Leclerc, for the championship. And that for the other seat, George's seat, over keeping George. If he feels like George is not doing what he needs to do, I feel like Toto would even take Leclerc over that. And looking at Ferrari, I think Leclerc would be tempted to some point. I feel like Leclerc's years he's starting to sit in his prime for too long now. At some point he's going to have to look for a better team, because there's no way you can waste that talent. As Seb said before he retired, there's a message to Leclerc. He said that Leclerc shouldn't waste his talent. Like, he's a very talented driver. He shouldn't waste his talent. And it would be very sad for him to waste his talent at Ferrari. So that would suck. Speaking of Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton is likely, doesn't have very long left in the sport. His time in the sport is starting to get there. So when he retires, obviously the right direction for Ferrari would be to bring Ollie Behrman. Ollie Behrman has been performing well so far. He's a solid driver. I wouldn't say he's the best of the new generation we got from last season, but he's among the best. I would say him and Gabby are probably second tier behind Kimi. I think Kimi, pure raw talent-wise, is the quickest driver out of what we had last year. And then Isaac Haja, I think Isaac Haja is pretty good as well. How good he is, though, so far in Red Bull, we haven't seen enough, but he's pretty good as well. So we will see how he performs throughout the season to gauge how he is. But otherwise, Kimi, or rather, Ollie Behrman's future is probably set at Ferrari. We're just waiting for when Lewis decides to call it quits. But yeah, that's how it is so far regarding that. All right. And speaking of drivers who also need to leave the sport, who are now, elderly, and I think it's time for them, to leave the sport. Even though they're legends of the sport, we need to also speak about Fernando Alonso. But regarding Fernando Alonso, I don't think it's a matter of he needs to leave the sport. Same with Lewis. I don't think he needs to leave the sport. These guys have the freedom to stay on the grid until like 50, because like they carry a lot of value, even if it's not just on the track, but like outside the track, they carry so much value for the sport. And Fernando is a very good example of someone who's basically checked out. Firstly, why I am saying this is because he bought a car. He bought a Pagani Zonda. It's special edition, Zonda always have like 50 million special editions, but it's a very specific special edition for him, for around $11 million. Yes, he spent $11 million on a car. That's not his first purchase. Obviously, he's got the Aston Martin cars. He's got the Valkyrie. He's got the Valhalla of Victor, the manual one, part of that special series, the Victor, Valhalla, and I forgot the other one. All those special cars that are like a couple of $1 million, nothing, chump change for someone who's getting paid and I mean, he works for Aston Martin, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, he's basically bought a bunch of supercars lately, hypercars, and it's kind of a sign to show that, he's starting to see life outside Formula One. And on top of that, he's got a child. Recently got his first child. So first child, I don't know if it's his first child, but he recently got a child, and he's basically starting to enjoy life outside of Formula One, which is a very good sign of someone who is starting to look at the bigger picture. We saw it even with Verstappen, which is funny because Verstappen is like way younger, but we're seeing it with Verstappen. The moment he started getting a child, or the moment he got a child and made big purchases outside of Formula One, looking at GT3, like his mind, it signs that someone is starting to kind of they're not putting all their effort in F1 anymore. Like, even with Verstappen, even though he is still very young and he's still performing at the highest level that he could be, but he isn't making Formula One his life anymore. He's kind of just left that. It's not like 2021 where like all his focus was Formula One. Like 2021 season was basically Verstappen going all out with Formula One, and you could see it on the track. You could see it with the way he was presenting himself, that F1 was everything. But now he's basically kind of doing F1 as like, yeah, this is my sport. I've done enough, I've won enough, but I don't really care too much if I leave in the next 2 or 3 seasons. He's kind of got that mentality. Same thing with Fernando Alonso right now at the moment. Like, he's kind of backing away from Formula One now that when he leaves, his life he's already building his life. So I don't see Fernando staying beyond 2027, honestly. If he stays for 2027 even, that would be shocking. If he stays after 2027, that would be like, whoa, So I think this year, next year, Fernando is pretty much leaving the sport, which I mean is sad, but at the same time, he's been in the sport for like longer than some of these other drivers around. Imagine like if Kimi wins this season, that means Fernando Alonso would have been in the sport when he would have been in the sport for so long that when he got in, Kimi wasn't even born yet. And Kimi is winning the championship. Think about that. Kimi wasn't born yet. Fernando hadn't won his first championship yet. And then Kimi comes onto the sport and he's winning his first championship and Fernando is still in the sport. That is crazy. Like, that longevity is unprecedented, and it's a ridiculously, like, I don't think any F1 driver would get to that level and like has the privilege to even get to that level. Like, that is ridiculous. So I think for someone like Fernando, honestly, he deserves his flowers. It's time for him to move on. Obviously, I'm not the biggest Fernando fan, but I mean, he's among the great drivers we have seen in the sport. So, it would be a shame to lose one of the greats, but it's the course. It's the natural course of a sport, of life. You can't be on the stage forever. At some point, you have to leave. Lewis Hamilton is another example of someone who is also starting to focus on things outside the sport. Lewis was someone who was always very private about his life. He is still very private about it, but like, he didn't really, have any public relationships or anything that was publicly known. But obviously, starting this year, we all know him and Kim Kardashian are now having a thing. Your opinions on that, I don't know. Obviously, amen. It's, yeah. But Lewis Hamilton, obviously, that's another thing. It's not like a big sign of like, oh, he's in a relationship now, he doesn't care about F1. No, it's not that kind of thing. It's more of like, he's starting to also look at life outside F1. Lewis Hamilton has always been someone who has been looking at life outside F1. Like, he's into fashion, he's into music, he's into like sport, other sports, extreme sports, whatever it is, surfing or other more normal sports like tennis, stuff. Like, he's into all those other sports and like investment wise and all that stuff, But him also getting into a relationship shows that, because that was one of the things that Lewis Hamilton really, I guess, stayed away from like the previous times, when he really tried to focus on Formula One, because it did affect his performances on track last time. So I guess it's kind of him also looking at it in a different way of like, oh, maybe I just need to expand my life, I guess. I don't know what they're thinking, but it's very interesting. And looking at it, it's very, very interesting that these drivers are starting to kind of not go 100% with F1, maybe 99%, 98%, 95%. They're starting to, make F1 still the priority, but not what dictates their life anymore. So it's very interesting and it's very good at the same time. These 3 guys have achieved what drivers dream of achieving, like being multiple-time world champion, having the freedom and basically controlling the sport for decades at a time. It's like insane. You know, in the 2000s, it was like Schumacher and Fernando, who were like the big names in the sport. The 2010s, we had Seb, we had Lewis basically controlling the sport. Now in the 2020s, it's been Verstappen. And even though we're only like 2026, but like Verstappen's name in F1 is still very big. And even if he was to leave and come back in 3 years time, he's still going to be like the biggest name in motorsport wherever he is. So it's basically like these guys have controlled the sport for a very long time. And for them to leave soon would obviously be a shame for the sport, but at the same time, it's the natural course of the sport. We are going to get obviously new drivers who take over, and that's just how it happens, you know. People who've been watching the sport back in the 90s and early 2000s, they probably remember Schumacher and be like, wow, Schumacher was so amazing. You know, they remember even Kimi Räikkönen early days, like, damn. Even Alonso's early days, you know, we go back to the 90s, we have the likes of Nigel Mansell, we have the likes of Ayrton Senna, of course, of so many drivers, Alain Prost in the late 80s, early 90s, like so many drivers that have come and gone and come and gone. It's very sad, but that's how sport is. That's how life is. You're not at the biggest stage forever. So, which is good, because when the driver you don't like is in the biggest, is currently dominating, you just have to wait for a few years. Might be 2-3 years, might be 10 years, but you just have to wait a little bit. At some point they will leave. I know the Hamilton haters, you guys went through a lot. I'm so sorry for you guys. Like, for basically 10 years, the sport was ruled by like one dude. Like, how did that feel? I mean, that's why I think that 2021 was such a big year, because a lot of people who didn't like Hamilton, and a lot of people who were basically neutrals. You know, people might start as neutrals, but if you see the same guy winning, you kind of start backing the underdog. You know, so the neutrals ended up becoming just Hamilton, or rather, they didn't become Verstappen fans, but they just became Hamilton haters. That's another thing we noticed when Verstappen started winning a lot. He started getting a lot of hate. It's because a lot of his fans from 2021 weren't fans. They weren't supporting him. They were just supporting the downfall of Hamilton. So now when he lost and Lando won, they were not supporting Lando. They were just supporting Verstappen's downfall. To be fair, Lando doesn't have many supporters. Most of his supporters are like DTS fans and like, you know, new gen kind of fans. So yeah, but that's a different thing. Anyway, it's very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's an interesting time to be watching the sport. Hopefully we get some proper news and some good news. As you guys can tell, it's like another break between another break, and then we're gonna have a summer break again. It's like, damn, so many breaks, man. But you know, the news is kind of slow at the moment. Nothing too crazy is happening, but we are going to get back into proper F1 soon. Few more weeks, get back into proper racing. We're gonna get into the European season. We're gonna start to see the championship heat up, development will heat up. So yeah, guys, stay tuned. That's basically for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.